and it is quiet in here. This series is going to be a lot of fun. My jaw is sore from laughing. But then I know I'm going to be in one of those videos one of these weeks, so I got to be careful how much I laugh. For those of you who are new, this is the debut week of our brand new series, Sex on Fire. And even though none of you will admit it, you just all want me to jump in, right? Someone's out there saying, I dare ya. So I'll jump in. A pastor named Mark Driscoll makes a convincing case that throughout history there have really been kind of just three main views with regard to human sexuality. View number one throughout history is the sex equals God view. Sex is God. Sex dominates your thought life. You direct your money toward it. You direct your time toward it. You give the best of your energies for it. It forms your identity. Sex becomes something to be worshipped. Now, in overreaction to that first view throughout history, there's another view, and this is called the sex is gross view. All right? Sex is gross. And if any of you went to an ultra-strict youth group growing up, or maybe what we call a fundamentalist type of church, then that's probably the view you were given by your youth leaders or the church leaders. And I'll talk a little bit about where that view originated in just a couple of minutes. Sex is God, sex is gross. And then the third view is sex as gift. That's right, I said gift. A gift that God gives us to treasure and enjoy within the context of marriage. And that is sex as God intends. Now, I doubt this will surprise you, but again, throughout history, people have had a really hard time seeing sex the way that God intends for us to see it. I want to start with the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, people treated sex as religion. And you see this especially in the nations that are surrounding Israel. The Canaanites, for instance, they would portray their goddesses as being naked. And the statuettes and so forth would all portray naked goddesses. They constructed Ashereth poles, which are basically huge phallic symbols beneath which they'd engage in illicit sexuality, and then they would call that worship. So ancient culture could be just as perverse or just as confused as any image of any culture, including our own, that you might have. So let's move on to the New Testament portion of the Bible. Some of you may recall that when the New Testament was written and at the time of early Christianity, the Greek culture had so much influence on the entire Mediterranean region. And in the Greek culture, it was accepted that older men would be with younger boys. Pedophilia was something that was widespread. The Greek city of Corinth had a temple to Aphrodite that had 1,000 hired prostitutes. People would go there to church. Which helps to explain why when the Apostle Paul wrote his letter to the church in Corinth, to the Corinthian believers, he gave them lots and lots of rules. Sometimes people have said to me, they're looking at 1 Corinthians, they're like, why are there so many rules here? Well, look at the context, right? You're battling a temple with 1,000 paid prostitutes, and they call that church. And so Paul says in his letter, do not have sex with prostitutes. Do not engage in homosexual sexual activity. Do not commit adultery. If you're not married, no sex, even if it's between consenting adults. Fast forward to today. I want to make a case for the argument that many people today in our culture view sex as God. And this may or may not surprise you. According to a Stats Canada health report, the average age that Canadian teens start being sexually active is age 16. That's the average. So that means some are starting at 13 or 14, even as some may be starting at 18 or 19.